Why, hello! Welcome to the Prince of Queens live stream channel. I am doing just a solo hangout with the new YouTube channel Our Cat's Gay. Oh crap, and I left my window open and I'm hearing myself. Oh no, where is it?
Am I still here?
Oh yeah, you're here.
Okay, my screen just went crazy.
Okay. So, yeah.
Hi, everyone.
I wanted to, well, we wanted to talk and do a live stream where we would be talking about I guess various things.
Things,
And,
many things.
Come check us out. Sorry, I'm tweeting. Yeah, God, I gotta close Windows now. There's people talking to me. This is annoying.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hello, people. You don't know who I am, and I don't know who you are, but I'm glad that we're all talking together. Yeah, how do I get ice? Or oh, it's right. It just works, doesn't it?
Okay. So sorry. I think that my computer is in order, and there's 4 viewers, and so now we should try 2.
Thank you for being patient for viewers. We love you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now I need to open up the. That's what I was supposed to be doing. There we go. I need to open up the windows so that I can watch it and see if anybody is trying to chat. Okay, there's a lot of.
Let me move. I'm in the kitchen. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone.
Now there's seven of us watching.
Yay!
7 people watching. So
7 is a sacred number in Judaism.
Yeah. Oh, and hey, before I start this, if you guys want to donate to me on Streamlabs, you can get us to potentially go over some articles or something and look at it. So my Streamlabs is streamlabs.com/Prince of Queens, I do believe, unless somehow I got it wrong, which would be really embarrassing. Let me just open it up to make sure that that's right, because wait, maybe I'm wrong. Hold up. Maybe I'm totally wrong, and I need to, because I really would like to be able to get money from people while I do this, because
money is awesome and very useful.
Yeah. Because I am not really making money with YouTube that much right now. So let's see. Got this allowed. I'm going into my Streamlabs.
I don't start my grown-up job until next week, and I've been unemployed for 6 weeks. So yes, I'm very poor.
Yes. So account settings, donation settings. This is the URL. PayPal. Oh, no, I got it wrong. Okay. This is, okay. Hold on, I got it wrong. And I really, really hope that, okay, so it's Prince of Queens live streams. Okay. Streamlabs.com, Prince of Queens live streams. There we go. And if you guys want to give me money,
give him money.
Yeah, you can send a message, and we will maybe like go over an article. Oh, my food is already here. Okay, entertain them while I get my food. Hold on one second.
Hello, people. I'm trying to connect to my computer myself because I guess we're just, two gay guys fumbling around with technology. So for those of you who don't know who I am a brand new YouTuber. I've been doing this for about 2.5 weeks. Prince of Queens graciously took interest in me when I spammed his channel with my first video. And he gave me some love on YouTube. And as a result, like I'm still, I only have 100 and some subscribers last time I checked. My biggest video right now, Grindr Has Fallen, has about 700 views. And I'm grateful for every single one of them and every one of my subscribers. I do not take you for granted. But yeah, so this is just, an interesting time for both of us because we are, we're unique in that we are gay men that are not, completely on board with the whole LGBTQI plus alpha blue Pikachu quant ninja. Those are last two are not letters. I don't know what they are, but yes, there are just so many freaking letters every few minutes. And
all right, I'm back.
Yeah. Oh yes, welcome back. But yeah, so that's who I am. If you didn't get I would love if any of you would check me out at some point. But if not, my feelings will be hurt. But I probably will move on.
By the way, you were saying that you don't want to neglect your audience. I neglect the fuck out of my audience, and I always feel so bad about it. I don't try to, but it's like
you've been at this a bit longer than I have. I don't think I can afford to neglect people that have literally just started taking an interest in me yet. You have to get them hungry before you can, stop feeding them.
Agreed. I try to answer the interesting comments, unless they're sort of too long, and it's hard for me to actually really read them. But if somebody, if somebody says something critical, I can be kind of bitchy in my comments. If somebody makes a critical observation that I answer by the end of the video, I'll be like, you should try watching the whole video the next time. And or I'll just sort of be like, yeah, that's not true, and maybe explain why. And maybe I'm not always that nice about it, but it's when you get comments all day from people, you sort of have a tendency to run out of patience when you're answering them, and it's not like you remember who said something. It's really rare when that's going to happen. But I have a tendency not to check my my chat and my live stream because I tend to be talking to people. Yeah. So yeah, that's a problem. Oh my God, somebody give me $5. And they said, Prince, will you be my
Give him the money.
Yes, I will. Yes, I will. But it might cost you a little bit more than $5 to be your daddy. But I'll say yes, I'll be your daddy. I am your daddy on air for $5. But if you want more, it's going to cost maybe a little bit more than that.
Well, you know what the other thing you can do is you can just be his daddy, but only for a very maybe for 1 minute. It's $5 per minute.
Yeah, $5 per minute.
It's called microtransactions. Steam has made a lot of money doing that. I'm sure you know all about that being a gamer.
So, and that was, by the way, that's from Zarlo 5899, who wanted me to be his daddy. So thank you very much for the and I will.
I hope one day to have people on the internet asking me to be their parent figure. For $5, yes, I'm cheap.
Yeah. So, I just got my pizza, and that means that I kind of want to start eating. Well, yeah, but that's fine. I had ordered. I'm not going to stop this live stream. So, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go upstairs and get a bowl so I can eat the fucking.
Go eat. I will talk salad. To the people in the stream.
I'm no. Don't worry. I'm just grabbing the bowl, and I'm bringing my computer with me because I have a laptop, and I'm just talking out loud my process. So I'm gonna get my bowl, and then I will be muting myself while we discuss a subject that you can feel like you can talk about for a second, and when I have something to say, I'll unmute myself, but I'll mostly sort of let you monologue while you're talking about such said subjects, but we have not
you're
decided.
Giving me terrible performance anxiety, Prince. Like,
well, that's fine. Why don't we start with the subject of your video? Because okay, so you talked a lot about
which video are we talking about?
Your first one.
Oh, yes.
Because I have a bit of a I guess of a disagreement. Not exactly a disagreement.
You've been waiting until we had a live audience to rake me over the coals.
I think that in your video, you sort of made it sound like you definitely alluded to this, which is that you were sort of saying that transgender activists were this sort of problem, but it's not really transgender activists. It's sort of a small but vocal minority of non-binary cross-dressers or something, I think is what you said. And you sort of mentioned that they were feminists, but I would personally say that it's actually really all feminism. That is really
that's a fair
behind
point.
all of this. Like, feminists are using transgender people as a shoehorn to monopolize the LGBT community. Like, they realize that they could say that transgender people are the most the most suppressed, and in order to guilt the rest of the LGBT community. Would you agree with it? And what would you say has bugged you about like transgender people and transgender activists in particular? Like, can you talk about that for a while?
Oh, I will do my best.
Okay.
So, as far as transgenderism goes, like, I don't have an issue with transgender people.
Yeah.
I have an issue with when, like, on my first video, what we talked about is that when you have something like Grindr, which is, a gay M for M, men for men app, and all of a sudden you seem to have this, I would imagine, fairly small but still very vocal minority of people saying, well, what about the transgender people? Why don't they get to be part of it? Well, it's like, well, okay, so the way I've explained this is like, so imagine that you have a house with a nice backyard.
Wait. Before you get into that metaphor, I just want to say real quick, sorry, I had to unmute myself.
Sure. Go right ahead.
That I did a little bit of research. One of the articles that you linked in the video, I went and read, and they, back in 2011, transgender activists were complaining that allegedly Grindr was deleting transgender accounts. And they were making that claim. And in 2011, the CEO came forward publicly and said, no, that's nonsense. We don't have a problem with transgender people. They're perfectly allowed to use our site. So we know that it wasn't excluding them. Like, we know that for fucking certain. And that wasn't good enough. They had to, and that's where the problem is. It's never good enough.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, like, I guess, like, and I will not pretend to be the most educated person on this subject. I am very open to being corrected if someone can show me that I'm wrong. I don't have a problem being wrong. I have a problem with wrong things. But yeah, as far as like trans people on Grindr, I don't have a problem with it. I'm not going to have sex, generally speaking, with a trans person. Like, that's not what I'm attracted to, and I don't need to be transphobic about it, if that's even the word for it. I mean, preferences, I don't believe, are phobias. Like, I don't expect straight men to want to have sex with me. So why should trans people expect me to want to have sex with them? Like, that's just not the way it works. And if yes, they've always had or at least as long as I've been using Grindr, they've had tribes on there, which, trans was one of them. And there are people on Grindr who want to have sex with trans people, and that's fine. But why did we have to broaden the gender categories on an M for M app? Like, the last time I checked, there are cisgendered men, transgendered men, and now that I believe there were cisgendered women. I'd have to double check that. But it's like, why is this here? This doesn't need to be here.
No, you can have cisgender women now. Yeah.
Yeah, so why the hell? So it's no longer.
No, do you know why? Because the people who were really behind this were fucking feminists, and
yeah, that makes total sense. Because there's no reason for that.
No, feminists hate gay men more than they hate anything. Like seriously,
Yes.
like and okay. So I think I don't know if you were here when I said this, but I like to say, as sort of a simplification, this is an oversimplification, but it's pretty much true. There are only two kinds of feminists. There are radical feminists and the people that radical feminists have tricked.
Yeah, so that would be like just the regular, like, the regular party members, not the inner party members, to quote Orwell.
Yeah. It's like 90% of people who self-identify as feminists know almost nothing about feminism. And the radical feminists want to keep it that way, and they want to misinform people. But there are two schools of thought within radical feminism. One of them is this is the sort of the old guard radical feminism, which they realized was never really going to work. They were like, we need to get rid of all men. Okay, radical feminism is basically the idea that men are a sickness and that we need to get rid of as many men as possible, or at least get rid of, that men suck and we need to get rid of men, basically, right? And that's what all feminist thought sort of is based around. And that's why it comes in waves, because like people sort of realize that that's what all the true believers think, and then they decide to get over it, but then like it comes back every couple of decades or so.
Kind of like the way the flu comes back every year. Like we inoculate people against it, and we never completely kill it, but just enough people keep the sickness, and then they come back again each year.
Yeah,
so that's what we need is a feminism vaccine.
They'll always there will always be a few women who think it's a good idea to blame men for all the world's problems, when in fact men also solve. It's like, okay, maybe
we're just all people. Like, some of us have penises, some of us don't. But you quit trying to control the language, and I'm sorry, your anatomy does not give you any more right to tell me what to do than mine does to tell you what to do.
Agreed. So, they blame men and masculinity. They blame the patriarchy, because it's always easy to blame the people who are in power, and men are always going to be in power because men devote more time and energy to their careers. Women don't run for politics. Like,
not typically. No, that's kind of the way things have always been. It's it's been a pretty successful arrangement for the last 12,000 or 100,000 years.
And women are the biggest beneficiaries.
Oh my God! All society is. I think Futurama, of all people, actually illustrated it the best, and they were being funny, but they said all of. I don't know if any of you are Futurama fans, but so the episode where Fry falls in love with the Lucy Liu bot, at one point they have this 50s style propaganda piece, and they talk about why you can't date a sex bot. And the reason you can't date a sex bot is because then there would be no reason for society to continue, because at one point they say all of society was just an attempt for men to impress members of the opposite or sometimes the same sex. And it's like, that's, all of society really at the end of the day. I mean, what is the purpose of cities and hospitals and all this? But for the early straight men to make their women as comfortable as possible so that they could get the best ones. That's a slightly extreme opinion and gross exaggeration. But, society has always benefited women first and foremost. Women and children first.
Yeah. Radical feminists are people who have such hatred of men, due generally to their own personal reasons, that they
that sounds like very good pizza, by the way.
It's actually I'm eating salad at the moment.
Oh, well then never mind. My ears have lied to me.
They hate men so incredibly much that they'll deny that women and children is even a thing. They'll say it's a myth.
Oh yeah, totally a myth.
Yeah.
No,
it's so funny. It's just like, because I guess if there's actually real disasters like a fire or something, chances are it's sort of every man for himself. People just run really quickly because they panic, and that's probably really true. But if you're in a situation where a boat is sinking or something and there's lifeboats, it probably does go women and children first.
Well, generally, I believe again, I'd have to Google this, but I believe the historical origin of the expression women and children first comes from the Titanic. Like, I'm pretty sure that's like where that expression comes from, because almost all of these
That's what
expressions
everybody
come from somewhere.
refers to, but I kind of feel like that was always because people,
Probably, but that's where it became the most famous. But
yeah,
again, I could be wrong. I mean, like, one of my favorite expressions, "Oh, the humanity." Like, I used to think that was just something that was out in the ether. I didn't realize that it came from this old newsreel of like when the Hindenburg exploded, and the newsreel was like, "Oh, the humanity," and of course, it was an actually sad thing, and he was actually, being serious. But since then, it's lost all meaning.
we'll keep going about the transgender people I'm eating.
And so you can actually eat the delicious pizza that none of the rest of us can share. No, that's fine. Yeah, transgender people. No, so again, no, I don't have issues with transgender people. I know a transgender person in my personal life, which kind of, and I'm not saying that for like, I know transgender people. I just mean that like literally every time I say something about transgender people, I think of this person when I say that. It's like, okay, is this something that I would say to their face? And if it's not something that I would say to their face, then I try not to say it. Maybe I don't always live up to that standard because I'm human, but anyway. So the issue that I have with trans people and Grindr is sort of like this idea that like there are so few actual transgender people, and I know this is kind of controversial, like saying like what it was an actual trans person, but that's because of the non-binary thing. And I could be wrong, but I believe that, like, for me, I tend to conflate non-binaries and transgenders, and I believe the term is traps, just people that call themselves trans but haven't really necessarily, quote, done the work. Like, they haven't seen a therapist, they haven't gotten a diagnosis, they're not interested, or at least they say they're interested, but they're not actually in the process of transitioning.
I think that one of the thing about those people is there are some people that I think get to sort of call themselves transgender who haven't transitioned, and it's because of how incredibly femme or butch they really are. Like, there's some people who are just so incredibly femme that you think that they're trans, and then it just turns out that they're not. And it's like, nope, I didn't even need any estrogen, I'm just like this. And it's like, oh, okay. And it's like, okay, I could see how that person would want to call themselves non-binary, or they could just call themselves trans. I wouldn't give a fuck. Like, just fucking,
but all these
but then the trenders are the ones who are like not even like that at all. Like, they're
like
just,
Riley J. Dennis.
Yeah, or they're just straight girls that, and like half the time they don't even get a haircut. They're just.
It is true that like this is not a statistic, but I mean, at least on YouTube, it seems like every single non-binary person, it's usually a straight girl, sometimes with an unusual haircut. They all have to wear glasses for some reason. I think that's in the rule book, and like it'd be like a straight girl, and every once in a while it's her incredibly like so gay he barely has a penis like boy toy friend, but generally it's almost always straight cis women. I hate using that word. I find the whole notion of cisgenderism to be okay. So if you're transgender, fine, whatever, but like I think the reason that the word cisgender exists is literally just to coddle transgender people and say like, because I'm sorry, we don't want to use the word normal. That might be too offensive for people. And again, it's a complicated issue. I don't know the answer to this, but like I'm just not really sure about it. And I really just always feel a bit dirty every time I say cis, unless I'm explicitly mocking it. Is that a weird thing? Do you ever struggle with the word cisgender, Prince?
I got used to it, but I can see why people get annoyed with it. The only thing that it is about it with me is that, like, there would be some people that would think that, like, once upon a time, heterosexual wasn't a word.
When was that, though? I mean, that must have been so long ago.
Probably when, our parents were, alive. Like, I think it probably, I don't know. I don't know, but there was a time within the past 100 years when people had never heard of the word heterosexual.
Yeah, well, probably because they felt no need to distinguish between, what was quote unquote normal and, anything else. So
yeah, well, and homosexuality wasn't an identity for that was like talked about because everybody was closeted. So like I don't know, but
or just rich.
yeah, regardless, keep going. Um,
Yeah. Well, anyway, like coming back to my original metaphor, like if you're like without like getting into the merits and problems of gay, trans identity, whatever, trans people, they can have their own community, but I don't understand why they feel, or not necessarily even like they, like the big trans they, but like again, like a small group of people felt the need that Grindr, not explicitly catering to their every whim and not building them into the app from the basic level, was somehow exclusionary. And I just find that utterly ridiculous. Like, there is nothing wrong with gay men having something just for themselves. If trans people are unhappy with it, then they should either find another platform that is more welcoming or create their own platform. And I think the reason that trans people have not, my husband has said, like, well, why didn't they create like Twister or Blender or something like that? And I think there might actually be an app named Blender. I don't think it has anything to do with that. But I think the reason that we don't see a trans dating app is because, frankly, like, it would probably not be worth the effort to make, because the target audience is so small. Even if you include non-binaries and transgenders, they are a tiny fraction of the LGBTQ alphabet.
yeah.
I mean,
Well, and like there'd be like, 99 trans people for every one. Like there's a cisgender dude that actually just likes to date trans women for some reason. He'd be
apparently that's a thing.
Well, yeah. And like, they're rather rare, from what I hear from my trans friends. Most of
There's
the
a lot
guys
of them on Grindr.
most of the guys who date trans women are just attracted to women, and they don't mind that this is a person that has a penis or was born with a penis.
Or they may like that, actually.
But then there's some that do like it, and it's like it's sort of a different thing. But like when that guy shows up, all of the trans women would be hitting him up, and so it would make for a weird environment,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things, like kind of how I imagine a lot of these straight dating apps. And I don't go on straight dating apps for obvious reasons, but at least in the past, it seemed like the issue that I heard a lot of my straight friends complaining about was like, when you go on to like a straight dating app, there'd be like a bunch of dudes just looking for girls, and there'd be like maybe like 3 or 4 girls that are actually using it, because women in general, in my personal experience, the air quotes right there, seem to find the idea of like sex hookup apps to be kind of demeaning, and perhaps that's changed. I welcome being corrected on that, but I don't meet a lot of girls who are like, oh yeah, I met this guy online and it was it's hot.
Younger girls are a bit different, I've noticed. Yeah,
I'm showing my age. Then, like, I didn't, when I was growing up, it was just not a thing, not even possible. And I'm not.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not that old.
When we were younger, it was like you were the biggest loser in the world if you were straight and you dated online. Like,
mm-hmm.
and it was different for gay guys, because
we've always lived online. I mean, for God's sakes, I mean, like before Grindr, I mean, we didn't even have Grindr. We just had cruising.
No, there are so many fucking people. Like every fucking person 35 and younger who's single uses Tinder, seemingly. Like if you go to fucking San Francisco and go to a trendy hipster restaurant, you can sit there and just eavesdrop on other people's conversations, and you can like determine that they're on a Tinder date, like their first Tinder date and stuff. Like,
that would be a really interesting show, actually, just watching people like on Tinder dates.
Yeah, I was sitting next to this guy and a girl, and they were on their first Tinder date, and the guy obviously liked her because he, like, this is what's the thing that made me start listening. He was like, so yeah, I was thinking I should probably have like memorized your whole Tinder profile so I knew what to talk about. And it was like,
oh my god, cringe.
Yeah, it was pretty cringe.
Oh my God, I'm cringing, and I usually feel sorry for straight guys because the whole burden is on them. Like everything, the whole situation is in the woman's control. Like I mean, like it's very rare that she'll pay for the meal. It's very rare that like really any of it has anything to do with the guy other than he pleases or displeases her. So I don't know, but that's terrible. I must admit that dude was not. He was not playing the game correctly. Even I know that.
I don't know if it was good or I don't remember. I just remember that line.
That's pretty terrible. I mean,
it's the kind of thing I would have maybe said when I was like 22.
Mm-hmm. But you probably would have said it like ironically or something like that.
Well, that's what he was trying to do. But
you've got to be so confident though. Like otherwise, it's a fine line between irony and just like awkward creepiness.
Oh crap! I need to. Well, sorry.
Was it bad pizza?
No, I'm out of system memory, and my computer's mad at me. So I have to.
Are we going to crash?
Hold on 1 second. I'm just going to mute you while I deal with this. So keep talking. Hold on.
Okay. So yes, I'm just talking, and yeah, Prince of Queens is struggling with his computer right now. If I recall, he has an older Mac. People still buy those, but I'm more of a Chromebook person myself. That used to be just a complete geeky thing, but I guess they're a lot better now, especially now that they have Android support. I just basically wanted to say this to make sure that people understood that even though I'm a gay cat talking about hookup apps, I do have other dimensions. Like I'm a huge phone geek. I actually make all of my videos on my phone, which is crazy that you can actually make full-length YouTube videos that look semi-professional, at least on a phone, without the use of a PC or desktop or laptop. Right? I think I just doubled up on myself. But yeah, let me see. It looks like the comment section is. I hope 11 of you guys are still watching. A trans dating app would be full of gross fetishists, and it sounds like hell.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
So yeah, but okay. So I wanted to just sort of briefly talk about, the pathology of feminism really is to instill a female supremacy and
gyno patriarchy, or no, yeah.
Matriarchy. Yeah, they want to replace the alleged patriarchy, which, by the way, obviously doesn't exist. We live in a world where men do everything they can to make women happy. Actually,
the patriarchy has been defeated by a hashtag. Apparently,
the patriarchy. Yeah, patriarchy never existed. But radical feminists want to. What we have now isn't good enough for them, and it will obviously never be good enough for them until they replace it with a matriarchy, which will never happen because radical feminists don't actually want to run society. They just want to get paid to complain about society. And
that's kind of the whole point of gender studies.
Yeah, that's sort of what it is. And I think that the leaders who've been at it for the longest kind of know that, but they well, they can't say that to the true believers, otherwise like they would just pull their own. It's like pulling the thread out of a quilt. Yeah. So they've come, but they I think that what happened is the radical feminists who didn't like die or whatever, they mostly
or get married.
yeah, and a lot of them did get married. Gloria Steinem has always been in relationships with men. So she was always talking about,
that traitorous bitch.
A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Meanwhile, she was always in relationships with men.
Hypocritical feminists don't say that.
Yeah. So this idea that like we should exterminate all men and put men into concentration camps for breeding purposes, blah blah blah, that has never completely gone away, and there are women who will say that but
I got into a funny conversation with that in a theater class back in the 2000s. I was talking to this obnoxious girl actually I think it was an improv class, and somehow this whole subject came up way back then. And at one point I just said, you hate men so much, but you need men, to continue. She's like, no, our scientists are working on that. And I just remember, even as a 20-year-old who wasn't particularly
It's like,
politically
which
active,
one's
like,
male scientists or female scientists?
I even said to her, "It's like our scientist. What you have, like a crack team of women working on self-fertilization. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, no. What they're doing is they're trying to infiltrate and take over like biological science labs that are run by competent men, and
So they need to have a social justice advocate to make sure that the science is not too problematic.
yeah. But okay, so regardless, those people they probably morphed a little bit, and they were like,
that.
okay, well, maybe we don't want to get rid of all of men, but what we do want to get rid of is masculinity. We want to get rid of toxic masculinity, which is all masculinity, actually, because they don't understand a masculinity. They, they don't understand that without fierce competition and, male camaraderie and the type of camaraderie that comes from team sports and competition, that's the same type of masculinity that is responsible for the firefighting force. Like if it weren't for that.
Funny you don't see too many feminist firefighters.
No, you never see them, but they'll say that that women have been making inroads in firefighting, and that that there's more and more female firefighters due to the fact that women, but it's not true. Like, it's just not true. Women
don't want to do that work. It's really dangerous.
And they can't qualify. They aren't qualified for it. They can't pass the entrance examination. And the only reason why more females have been passing the firefighting test is in certain countries is because they have been lowering the entrance examination. And the only fucking reason for that is probably just for gender ideologues who are trying to make it look like getting rid of masculinity is a good thing. Like, they would literally have people die in fires just to make their point about how men aren't needed.
But they're just victims in the process for female liberation. And, if a few people...
Collateral damage. But so that's how insane these people are. And they really do want to get rid of all of masculinity, either by way of just exterminating all men, or they will do it in more subtle ways, and by trying to train men not to be men. Now, they can sort of do that with straight guys a little bit,
but they can't do it with us.
Yeah, and it really bugs them that gay guys exist. They have no way of shaming the maleness out of gay men necessarily, so they have to just blatantly bully us. And they have been doing this since at least the 1970s.
They're very good. There's a book called The Fag End of Feminism, which I bought, and I'm embarrassed. Even though I bought it like 6 months ago, I still haven't read it.
Oh, you'll read it as soon as you start reading it, you'll finish it that night.
Yeah, I have it on my phone. I have no good excuse. I haven't. But it's good. I know. I read the prologue and I'm like, oh my god, this is so true. Yeah.
It's a good quick read. So sorry, I just took another bite.
You're really hurting all of our listeners that have misophonia right now.
So the thing is, these are people that they want they hate that gay men are men. But the funny thing is, they had this plan to take over the world by demonizing toxic masculinity, and they basically pussy whipped an entire generation of heterosexual men. Most of the gay men, they were pretty successful, for the most part, at least in the left. Mm-hmm. But then it didn't. But then it didn't work. And they didn't put Queen Hillary into office, and there's even more backlash against feminism in the UK. And so their central offices have massive budget cuts, and
I think you talked about how like everyday feminism, Cat Black, and a lot of the ideologues are suddenly becoming mysteriously silent.
Yeah, well, everyday feminism lost their funding. They don't have funding anymore. They're begging for scraps from their audience, and they're in massive debt, and no one's really sharing their
Save us
audience.
from the patriarchy, please. We're strong women that need your money.
Yeah, and their articles have just gotten more and more insane. But the other thing is that these wait. Oh, so they're trying to infringe upon gay male spaces and everything, and they thought that transgenderism was good for a while because, well, yes, at least they're not being masculine. At least we're convincing them to not be masculine, and that was good as long as they thought that they were going to take over the world, right? Like as long as that was part. But then when it turned out that they didn't get to take over the world, and then they started losing their money because they spent all of it trying to put Hillary Clinton into office and to take over, the UK. And now that they're losing their money, then they have to expel transgender people out of feminism, and we have the
TRFs.
Yeah, which is a growing thing. There's more and more TERFs every day, and so it really just shows the nature of feminists. And so this whole thing with Grindr is really just a part of their their weird, never-ending and never accomplishable quest to try to conquer all of men. And they're just using transgender people as a vessel. Like these are transgender feminists, but ultimately it's not. I don't know which feminist is making this, calling this shot, but it's definitely a feminist, and she doesn't like the fact that there's men who are attracted to men. So yeah, that's what I wanted to rant about for a little while.
Yeah, that is that seems completely fair. Yeah, kind of so yeah, I may have missed the point a little bit in my first video, but it was my first video. But yeah, regardless where it's coming from, like it does definitely sound about right that it's feminism and really not so much transgenderism in of itself that is responsible for this incredible anti-gay male push that we're seeing in LGBT right now. But you made me hungry too, so I made myself a quesadilla, and now people are just watching us eat. Yeah, I don't know. I really hope that this blows over soon, because it's just really ridiculous. I mean, how long can we keep arguing about, our genders and bathrooms? Now I remember one thing I was going to say. The more we talk about this, Prince, the more I'm reminded of 1984. And I always thought that 1984 would have more to do with like governments. But honestly, again, you're talking about how like this never ending war with men. Isn't that kind of like in 1984 where they say like the war with
Never read it. Never read it.
Really? Oh my God. You really okay. So here we completed the obligate hipster intellectual thing where we tell each other, oh, you have to read this book. You've told me I have to read The Faggot and Feminism.
Yeah.
And now I'm telling you, you have to read 1984, because you'll just see it over and over again. That man was a genius. He just was. It's funny. It actually is Marxism that is trying to take over the world, just not in the way that he anticipated. But yeah, the whole point of 1984 at the end of the book was that it was the whole point of the war between these three countries, and it didn't even really matter which countries they were. It wasn't that anyone would ever win, but that the war would keep going, because as long as the war was in a constant state of war, that's a bad sentence, but as long as the war was forever ongoing, then the state had total control, and people would have to make any sacrifice and do whatever they were told, because the war, if it was unwinnable, then the war would be forever. And if the war is forever, then people will just live the way they're told.
Yeah. So, yeah. I just want to say that transgender people, there are very few legitimate transgender people. it's very easy for them to get sucked up. I think that they're easily manipulated because they need, you know, support groups and everything, and feminists run all the support groups. Like you can't find a transgender support group that isn't run by feminists, and you can ask any transgender person, they'll tell you. You know.
Yeah, that sounds about right, honestly.
Yeah, and then it's really messed up because like they
don't really have their best interests in heart.
No, they really don't. And no, and they did the same thing. Like they did the exact same thing with gay men. Like I remember that in the fucking 1990s when I came out at 14, there were like queer youth groups, but it was all like self self-identified lesbians who mostly weren't lesbians, and they were just sort of like
man haters.
Yeah, there were girls who had issues with men for whatever reason, and they were like largely feminists, and it was run with this like feminist slant, and I was like would be like one of the only guys there, and it was very like we called them, you know, PC lesbians at the time. It was
I've heard that before.
That's what we called SJWs in the 90s, like PC people, and usually they were lesbians, and there weren't so many of them. But
they weren't trendy yet.
No, they didn't try to have the mass cultural thing. But it's like, you know, they were willing to be nice to gay men because nobody else was, and there weren't that many of us, and we didn't have anywhere to go. But it was like ultimately
we were politically useful at the time.
Well, we were at the time, and they were going to fucking, you know,
use and abuse us.
yeah, because of the fact that they had claimed to help us. And they didn't even really help us. They just, like, you know, made a point to help us, you know?
They took credit for it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so there were some feminists who sponsored youth groups in the 1990s where a bunch of feminists hung out with gay men, and it was actually kind of awkward. Great. Congratulations. Like, you know, but so they're doing the same fucking thing to transgender people, and they're already turning their backs on the transgender people the second it turns out that transgender people like actually want something for their own rights, and you know they're like, oh well, feminism, you know, like we're not going to share resources with you, so fuck off. And
the moment we get into gender purity tests, like then everything's out the window, because I think the deconstruction of gender in radical transgenderism actually hurts the feminist argument, because if you make the argument that, you know, biological sex doesn't even exist, well then why the hell why are women or their suffering particularly unique or important if gender means nothing?
Mm-hmm. No, it's okay. Did you watch my video that's called Why Feminists Deny Gender's Existence?
I'm pretty sure I did. Full disclosure, sometimes I watch your videos late at night, mm-hmm. and I drink.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've watched it, and I think I can imagine. I think I know what it is. But why don't you paraphrase for me, just in case?
I think it was actually one of my better insights over the past 2 or 3 months, and what I realized is that, okay, so feminists, what they really want at their core is obviously to hate men and blame men for all of the world's problems. That's what feminism is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, they were faced with a dilemma. Because if men are so fucking bad, then why are men of society the ones who are doing all the good things? Like, if you look at the most productive, the most helpful, the most heroic people in society, they're also men. So sure, we have a lot of criminals, but we also have a lot of great men who do great things for women. So how does a feminist reconcile wanting to simultaneously blame men and then also, also at the same time, why aren't more females doing these great things? Why is that happening? So then they had to come up with the concept, because if they want to believe that men are oppressing women, but there's all these great things that men are doing. And so they were like, well, I guess the explanation is that men created gender roles and they aren't allowing women to live up to their full potential, is sort of like what they came up with to reconcile the notion that they wanted to demonize men, but then they realized that, you know, women aren't all that great. But it was kind of a
That's kind of interesting because forgive me for interrupting, but I want to say this before I forget. Like early Jews had to reconcile the Old Testament version of God was all powerful, and he was responsible for all good and all bad. But as he developed, as the religion evolved, eventually it was like, well, how can a benevolent God also be responsible for all the bad things? And that's the point where they had to create Hasatan, the adversary, Satan, because they had to reconcile, well, how can an all-powerful, all good God allow bad things, or not only allow, but also be responsible for them? Well, he's not responsible for them at all. It's Hasatan who's done that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not that simple. It's not that different. But in the case of feminism, they discredited their own argument intrinsically, because they wanted to hate men and say that men are so much worse than women, but then when presented with the evidence, they said, okay, never mind, they're actually just the same.
Our bad.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense. And so,
well, that's why rationality is just a form of patriarchal thinking, and shut up because I say so.
Yeah, it's just this weird, because it's like they had to like, in order to even like
to justify their framework,
there's no way to justify it. And so then they had to go like, well, then we were talking about the difference between gender and sex and blah blah. And you can hear a radical feminist go on and on about how it's impossible. Like, you can, like, Megan Murphy, who's the most famous TERF, and she is she sounds somewhat reasonable, and she seems like maybe she's nice, and she's really girly and whatever.
Haha, my glitter is a form of patriarchy.
Well, she's not that girly.
I actually don't know anything about her. I just made a voice. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So she had a speech that she delivered to the Canadian Parliament, where she was talking about Bill C-16.
That lovely thing.
Yeah. And she was against it because she thinks that men can never become women, basically. And but she was simultaneously trying to say that, she was like, it is impossible to change biological sex. However, gender roles are forced upon us by patriarchy. I have always felt confined by my gender role as a woman, but she's totally femme, like totally femme. And it's like, no, you haven't.
You inhabit that role.
You benefit so much from female fucking privilege, you know, like
you exude it.
Yeah, and that's what it's like with a lot of feminists. I do think that there was the old wave of feminists were a bit more butch in general, and they at least had the integrity to be like, yeah, screw the patriarchy, we can do stuff our way. And you know, they would start girl bands. Their band might not have been really that good, but they would at least try, you know. Whereas like fucking current feminists, they just want to sit on their fucking laptop and complain and not even make sense when they're complaining. Like, not even cite their sources, cite each other as sources, you know, like it's gotten progressively worse.
My bestie said this and I can vouch for her.
Yeah. So it's a very weird thing, because it's like they simultaneously want to say that, you know, gender,
we don't need you, but do what we need.
It's like nobody can ever change their sex, but gender roles are arbitrary and constructed by patriarchy. Well, then why can't somebody change their gender? Well,
Hmm.
well, they sort of can, but they'll always be a man. But why do you care?
It's
Because I don't want them taking my fucking money. That's why. Because I'm a professional feminist. Like, that's all it
this
comes
this
down
this
to.
it sounds about right. This kind of reminds me of Rachel Dolezal, how like the same people that can talk about how it's perfectly like not only okay but expected that of course a man or a woman can be whatever. But all of a sudden, when a white woman thinks that she identifies as black, all of a sudden it's a part of white supremacy.
Yeah, and professors get fired for making a paper about that, or at least get in trouble. Like,
Because yeah, academic freedom.
yeah. So, hey, I want to veer um towards. We were going to talk about net neutrality a bit.
Oh yes, please educate me because I only know the mainstream perspective on this.
Well, why don't you sort of say what your impression was? Because I'm still eating.
Okay, okay, okay. I shall allow you munch, and then I will take the intellectual beating if what I say is not true. Um, so the narrative that I had been told and what I had believed until I was told there was something else to consider was that net neutrality essentially means that Comcast cannot keep you from connecting to Netflix if Netflix Comcast extra to allow you to compete to them because they're a competing service, and vice versa. You wouldn't necessarily need to pay extra to Comcast to allow you to connect to a different service that they don't want you to access. It's always been framed to me, and it made sense with the information that I had, that you don't necessarily want to have your ISP being able to tell you, like, okay, no, like those are bad sites. We don't want you going to those sites. And if you go to those sites, we'll either block you or we'll throttle you or we'll charge you extra. It sounds like a really bad idea. And it's a very unpopular idea, from what I understand, to change it. I watched, I think it was a PSA, what's his name? PSA Stitch,
Yeah, PSA Stitch.
yeah, I really like his videos. He's a sarcastic asshole, but he seems very smart. But he made a video about it, and from what I understood from that video and some of the other arguments that I've read, that basically the killing net neutrality has nothing to do with competition. It has to do with Comcast and Verizon wanting to prioritize their own services and keep people from using competing services and making other companies pay them in order to allow their customers, which they have an essential monopoly over because Comcast is to Verizon. As far as like total service area and customers, I mean, yes, there are other companies, more so with cell phone providers, but when it comes to internet carriers, at least like where I live in California, it's basically Comcast and maybe AT&T if you're lucky. I'm actually getting AT&T now, but only because of a promotional deal that waives their otherwise ludicrous installation fees. Like
I
when
think
you don't.
there's Comcast, Infinity, AT&T.
No, Xfinity is Comcast is Xfinity.
Okay, Comcast
Yeah,
is Xfinity. Okay, no.
yeah. They do that to make it look like there's with competition, but no, it's all Comcast.
Yeah. Okay.
And we don't, at least in America, we really don't generally have access to competing ISPs. Like in the 10 years that I lived in the East Bay, this is the first time in 10 years that I've actually had a choice. There literally wasn't anything else, unless, like, yes, I could have gotten AT&T Uverse like 5 years ago, but I would have had to pay $300 to get it. It's like, no, that's not a choice. Like, your choice is take the crappy deal or pay someone a lot of money that you may or may not have to get basically the same deal. That's not choice. That's like, what do you want? Do you want this flavor of poison or the other flavor of poison? So that's, as I understand net neutrality, is that it is a lot of very big fish trying to make sure that they decide who gets to swim where. And if everyone else does swim, then they have to pay for the ability to swim in the fast lane.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's my understanding. And granted, do have a limited understanding. And here, I published my video tonight, and people have been asking me to make a video about it for a while. You know, I've gotten at least 5 or 6 requests from audience members being like, I would like you to chime in about net neutrality, or like people telling me to, you know, forward a petition, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, fuck no, I'm not doing that. Like, I don't really know everything about this. I've been hearing about it for a really, really long time. Everybody is talking about it. Literally everybody, from fucking Philip DeFranco to every fucking other person on my Facebook friend list who is copying and pasting something about how to contact your representatives. They're simultaneously saying, nobody's talking about this. That by itself makes me suspicious. Like anything that is such commonly agreed upon, oh, this must be good, this must be good, this must be good, and they're cramming down our throats that much, it makes me suspicious by itself, right? And
I get that.
So, but at the same time, I don't really understand it that well. I've looked into the and one of my things that I noticed is that I kind of feel like if somebody can even follow the arguments, like if they think they even know what if they think that they even know what net neutrality means, they think that they're educated about it.
True.
Like, because there literally are still people that will tell you, oh, feminism is just about equality. I don't know how you didn't know that. And the reason they're saying it like that is because, like, they only learned that 2 years ago or some shit.
A little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Like, yeah, they think that everybody else must be even more fucking dumb than they are. And so
it's so simple.
It's like, yeah, didn't somebody tell you what somebody told me? Oh my God. And it's like, yeah, but you don't actually know how this works. So I was immediately suspicious because of that reason. I looked into the arguments, and also there were a lot of, you know, people who were net neutrality advocates that I knew in my everyday life who were like ideologues. Like they were fucking Marxist ideologue people. And
I believe Steven Crowder was coming on the side of net neutrality, unless I'm completely mistaken.
That's interesting.
I may be completely wrong on that, but because I don't watch him all that much, but I do remember him making a couple videos about it, and he didn't seem like he was a big fan of it being changed.
So
that may just be a red herring, but
I knew a girl who was a girl that I knew since high school who was a relatively femme cisgender woman who started calling herself non-binary and she's also white, but I guess of like Middle Eastern descent, and she would call herself a person of color, and then she like took it back publicly and was like, sorry, I should have referred to myself as a white passing person of color, and blah, you know, she was just like always like that, and she was an advocate for net neutrality as like part of her job. And that was just that just gave me a sort of a prejudice against the type of crowd who was like big, because that was prior to 2015. Like when she was one of the people that was able to help, you know, put the rules into place, the rules that became the rules in 2015. And people think, oh, well, you know, it's good to have regulations. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure that it probably is to a certain degree. Absolutely. But there were like 400 pages of regulations. And when people talk about it, what they talk about is the worst case scenario. Like they say, oh, net neutrality prevents this. It prevents these fast lanes that ISPs could use, where, you know,
well, they have done it before, from what I understand.
Very, very few times. Very few times. Like, I read a list of like all the times in which this allegedly had happened, and it was these things like some phone service was caught blocking some app, and blah 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 blah.
I believe it was Verizon.
Yeah. And but the thing is, that blocking thing, I don't think that I don't know actually if that was lifted or not. They're saying that they won't be able to just block things now. Like they're saying that that's going to be against the rules. So
Well, they say that, but they're also
yeah, no,
like taking all the teeth.
I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know if there's going to be new rules that are replacing them. I don't know.
It seems doubtful because the FCC itself, the dissenters are saying, you guys have gutted our own agency. And now the only way to arbitrate disputes will be going to the FTC, and that takes years, which effectively makes any resolution useless in the here and now.
Well, regardless, there weren't actually that many cases of this happening in the past, and it could definitely happen in the future. But there were instances of that you could look at where so the way that net neutrality made it, and I might be wrong about this. This is what I don't really like to talk about that much, because this is the actual mechanics of how it actually works. The cost that it takes for an ISP to provide data transfer between the host and the client is a universal amount. Despite the fact that places like YouTube and Netflix are like the overwhelming majority of all web traffics, they're paying about the same amount as everybody else, and they cannot pay for a fast lane. Therefore, what they need to do is they need to, in order to get out all of the data that they need to process, it's up to YouTube to have enough servers so that all of the servers can process all the data in the same lane, as it's the same. Otherwise, it wouldn't process. Now,
but it is interesting though that YouTube and Netflix both are radically against these changes, though they are actually the loudest advocates.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this is where it gets confusing. This is where it gets counterintuitive. So, well, no, that's the big red flag right there. That who's advocating for it? It's the people who already have basic veritable monopolies, right? Netflix and YouTube, like they.
Yeah, well, also Comcast are the ones that are saying like, no, we don't want to do this. But they also have competing services that they really don't. I mean, who has the most to lose from streaming? It's the cable providers. It's the satellite dish providers. The TV packages that millennials basically only get because it's cheaper to get the TV package included, when most of us probably only want the internet package.
Yeah, well, and so. And this is going to make it so that people can customize their internet a little bit better, likely. And okay, so but here, I want to go back to this Fastlane thing. So YouTube and Netflix are paying the same amount of money for transferring the data as another site would, and like you can only transfer so much on the ISP. It's a fixed thing. It's like a fixed lane for everybody, even though they're transferring so much data. So they just have a whole bunch of different servers, and that works fine, right? But if you were a small company that couldn't afford a whole bunch of servers, then you would only have the connection between the servers that you have and however many customers you want. So if you were trying to stream a massive amount of videos, like if you tried to start a YouTube alternative, but you only had 5% of the servers that YouTube has, then if people in mass started trying to actually watch your videos, it would time out. It wouldn't actually stream because you wouldn't have enough. Your lane wouldn't be big enough. You wouldn't have enough servers to back up the data. Do you see what I'm saying?
I see that, but at the same time, wouldn't the counter also be true that because you're a small company, you couldn't afford to get the fast lanes that the larger companies already have, and therefore you would never actually be able to compete because because you can't pay for the fast lane, you're stuck in the slow lane, which
I
makes
think
you
that that's a
uncompetitive.
I think that that's a fair argument to be made, but who knows, you know? Like I
Well, not
don't
us, obviously.
yeah, I don't know. And but also, you know, like maybe um like okay, servers are expensive. Getting the army of servers that YouTube undoubtedly has will cost millions and millions and millions and like billions of dollars, I'm sure, a year. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure YouTube actually spends billions of dollars a year on their servers and on maintenance and everything, just for YouTube, because YouTube is like the majority of web traffic. Like it's like YouTube and Netflix combined are about like 50% of all web traffic.
And Google itself.
Yeah. So with that in mind, you have to keep in mind that
so we're getting I'm sorry to interrupt you, but so Bang's Naughty Bits sounds like he knows something. He's saying it's not about servers, it's about backbone interconnects, which if I understand this, and Bang's Naughty Bits, please tell me otherwise. If what I understand is saying is that it doesn't really matter how many servers you have, but about whether or not you have enough connection points to get to the servers. Is that what you're saying, Bangs? Because if that was the case, then I guess what they're saying is like it doesn't really matter if you have enough servers, but basically if people can get to your servers. Mm-hmm. I think that's what he's saying.
Well, okay, the basic argument, you know, let's scrap the word servers because I'm not a tech guy, but the argument is that if you are a big company, you can have you can get the equal sized lane, you know, that everybody else gets, and you have enough resources to make sure that your streaming gets out to the people, and you can do that if you're a big company, which is why Netflix and YouTube are able to operate. But it happens all the time when you want to look at a video and it's streaming off of a site that's not YouTube. Haven't you noticed that it never will stream? Pretty much, like you're on Facebook and then someone links to some video of a crazy car chase, and you want to look at it for some reason, and it's not on YouTube.
But it's on some weird Indonesian server that you've never heard of.
Yeah, and it never fucking works. What people are saying is that's because of net neutrality regulations, because these are sites that don't have the resources to provide a fast lane, and it would be way, way, way cheaper to make an arrangement with the ISP company itself to make it so that you could get streaming. And furthermore, one of the things that I heard is that there are ways to encode the video so that it could be transferred and way easier, that net neutrality won't let you do. Like net neutrality won't let you encode your data in a certain way because there's just so many regulations. And that's one of the arguments that I've heard. So these are technical arguments, but that's not my area of expertise. What I found was really interesting is that John Oliver is one of the, you know, he's like the poster boy for net neutrality. John Oliver is on HBO. HBO is owned by Time Warner. Time Warner is supposed to be merging with AT&T, which is supposed to be one of the big bad boogeymen of all of this.
Wait, doesn't Comcast own Time Warner?
No.
Oh, I thought they did.
Wait. Let me just make this. Let me just make sure that that's not true, because I don't think it's. Oh wait, I can't.
Let me look that up real quick.
I can look it up
on my computer. We're both just typing away. It is owned by Comcast.
Wait, really?
Yeah, Comcast owns Time Warner. That's because they bought. Oh, that's right. Because NBC bought Time. NBC bought Time Warner, and then Comcast bought NBC. But yeah, no. John Oliver, though, he's made a whole thing out of like saying things which he even says will probably get him in trouble, and that's sort of his brand, is just being the guy that says stuff that.
Wait, okay, so and Comcast and AT&T are supposed to be competitors,
Yes.
but Time Warner and AT&T are merging.
Are they? That I didn't know about. But
Yeah, no, there's an AT&T Time Warner merge.
okay, let
So
me see
really
it.
what's happening is that it's a weird, that doesn't even make sense. What the fuck?
No, like it's just, everything is just turning into a giant oligopoly right now.
Hold on.
Um,
AT&T Time Warner merger.
so it's, all of us are just furiously typing, trying to figure out what we know and what we don't know.
No, it is the, yeah, that's true at the same time. How, but that doesn't, okay, so, okay, maybe this none of this makes it, now it just seems like it's a gigantic conspiracy and there's nothing else that I can really say to make it sound more sense.
We backed ourselves into a corner of just confusion.
Yeah, I wanted to, no, I wanted to, okay, because so like I did not feel confident that I should be against this, just because of like, you know, all like John Oliver has done some
questionable things.
yeah, he's said some very very politically biased things, and I don't like. He seems like such an actor to me. I don't like how he's like so like Monty Python and like, it's just like, you know, like
I love Monty Python.
I don't dislike Monty Python. It's just like, okay, is that where we're going to be getting our news? Because, you know, he sounds smart to Americans. Like, really?
I get that. I think
Granted, you could say the same thing about Sargon, probably. So,
yeah, I mean, what is it? I mean, Americans are just predisposed to take British voices more seriously. I'm not sure what it is. Like, if I was a feminist, I could try to say it was some sort of like, you know, internalized misogyny, but like internalized like
post-colonialism or something.
I love that. Yes, we have internalized post-colonialism. But yeah. I mean, honestly, it's almost kind of true, though. I mean, like, why do we like America? I don't know if any other nation just like gets like an erection quite as fast as Americans when we hear British accents. I mean, like the fact that like Australian and New Zealand actors, like, yes, it's true, their accents are very different, but most to your average, just cornbread American, it's just like, oh, listen to those fancy English people talking.
Yeah,
well, I'm not trying to make fun of people from, but yeah.
Sorry, no, okay, my mind is kind of blown because I did not know that. Why didn't someone fucking? I've been talking about this for fucking weeks.
Because we weren't friends then.
Yeah, but people are so fucking. Because it's like you would think that's okay.
Someone would have brought that up to you.
Yeah, because but people can't generally follow it when you start talking about which company owns which company. Like they don't. It doesn't.
It is pretty complicated.
It doesn't compute in their head, and the second you start talking about that stuff, they think that you're just talking about conspiracy theories, you know. And it's like, no, but
get out your tinfoil hat.
It's like, no, but HBO is literally owned by Time Warner, and shut the fuck up. Like that's the thing. But if Comcast Comcast owns Time Warner, and so they're trying to. That's so strange.
Yeah, I mean, like the big bads, from what I understood in this whole argument, let's not even say big bads, but the people that are arguing the hardest for the repealing of net neutrality were Comcast and Verizon. Because they're the big fish. They have the most to gain from that. Google doesn't want to have to pay more for different people. You know, doesn't want to have to pay Comcast more to make them the default, because that's what Apple. The reason if you have an iPhone, the reason that you have Google as the default search engine is not because Apple loves Google. They fucking hate Google. The reason Google is the default search engine is because they pay Apple something like $2 billion a year or something like that to be the default search engine. And Google doesn't want to have to do that on every single ISP. Like every time you like try to go to google.com, that like, you know, Comcast or whoever gets like a little microtransaction, 10 cents or whatever, like to go to Google, as opposed like to say they wanted to go to Yahoo. Actually, that probably wouldn't make sense, because I believe who was it who bought Yahoo? Someone bought Yahoo recently. I think it was Verizon actually who bought Yahoo and AOL, and they're calling it like it is some really stupid name, like not Own, Omen, or I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know.
but yeah, Go Duck. I've never gone to Go Duck.
Duck, Duck, oh yeah.
DuckDuckGo, yeah, and Bing. Bing is never ever going to be a thing. Unless they pay people lots of things, if nothing else, because like Google is already a verb. Like if you say like you Google it, it sounds about right. If you say, oh yeah, I binged it, that just sounds like you made a terrible mistake. But okay, my prejudice may be showing though. Oh, Bing. Okay, well, so Bang Naughty Bits is telling me
it doesn't sound so great either.
No, it really doesn't. Okay, so Naughty Bits is telling me Bing is the default Siri search engine, and yes, Verizon. Okay, I thought so I've always been reading that. I know for a long time, at least, that Google was paying Apple to be the default search engine, but I guess that is no longer the case. But yeah, this is the whole issue. It's like giant companies, like basically countries let's just call them like, nations without territory, basically paying other nations without territory to buy us mere mortals in order to, use services. But it doesn't matter which services we want to use. We use the services that they determine for us.
Yeah, I don't know. It's still the argument that I presented in my video was that, John Oliver was arguing as the sort of net neutrality spokesperson, but he has everything to gain from sort of keeping the rules the way that they are. It just seems that it made me skeptical that, somebody who's owned by Time Warner would be arguing for this. And if Time Warner's already owned by Comcast, then that does make John Oliver. My argument still makes sense in the way that it's really hard to take anything at face value and like trust like it's like,
well, yeah, you can't trust any of these companies. Like they all have something
and ultimately John Oliver, even if he is willing to stand up to some corporate interests, there's many things he cannot say on his show. And so,
well, that is true. I personally like John Oliver, at least as a comedian.
Me too.
And the fact that he's willing to like is funny. As funny as he is, like there's so much research about really obscure topics on his show. Like I do like that, and I really like that thing where he used like the huge budget for one of his episodes where they forgave a bunch of people's medical debts. So. I'm not a political expert. I'm sure he said many things which are incredibly stupid, but I do like him.
I think, I think
as a subject.
Funny. I just, I guess that one of the reasons I get bugged by him is simply like when I say that I hate him, what I mean is that
what he represents.
Well, it's also like when I watch him, I have a tendency to feel like he is indoctrinating me. Like I feel like I believe what he's saying, and it but then there's been certain times where people have pointed out just how incredibly biased and like one-sided what he's, like Roaming Millennial did a good video debunking him. I
need to start watching her. I've only seen like 2 episodes of hers, or 2 videos of hers, but I know she's very good.
Yeah, her earlier videos were really, really, really good, I thought. But it was like one of those things where once I thought about certain things, I was like, oh, he's really, really biased, but I totally believed him because he seems really smart and well put together, and he has a good sense of humor, and that made me really resent him.
I want to do that.
Yeah, well, not so much. No, not like I want to do that. More like, well, fuck, you tricked me. Like,
yeah, no, you don't. You feel like you're being taken in. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I felt like I was being bait and switched or something. It's like, oh, so how many other things is he telling me that I'm going to learn are not actually necessarily true? And
that's the danger when you let anyone into your head.
Yeah, exactly. So but I guess, you know, like ultimately I have a potentiality to do that with my own channel. We all do. Like we all have our own biases. We all will search for things that we want to see to draw the conclusion, you know, the confirmation bias conclusion that we will be searching for. You know, like
Echo chamber.
yeah, I have a tendency at this point to believe that feminists are only the supremacy movement, and that like everything that they do, anything that has to do with feminism in any way is just to advance that, blah 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 blah. When ultimately, there is the majority of feminists who think that they're good people and legitimately want to do good things, and they're just misguided, and they probably do good things, and they might even do it in the name of feminism with no ulterior motive, and I'm being too hard on the majority of these people. And so
Well, you could probably say that about like any real movement. I mean, the majority of Republicans, the majority of Democrats, they're probably not doing things for terrible reasons. Like the majority of people that you talk to are just, you know, good people, and they don't really have, you know, much. They don't feel like they have a voice or much to do, so they choose what feels right to them, and they themselves probably don't, you know, mesh very much with the leaders at the top. And it's probably the same thing with feminists. Like, you know, your average Democrat, your average Republican, they're probably just average good people that want, you know, for life to be fair in their own view. Now, whether or not that makes, you know, and whether you to give them the option to say, well, how about we make this deal that our leaders are in any particular movement are making, they'd say, well, no, that's screwed up. That's probably how it is with feminists, where you have a bunch of, you know, generally good-hearted women and some really sad men that are saying, like, you know, we're doing this for good reasons. And then, like, you get to the top and they're like, no, we really don't care about that. We just want the money.
yeah, that's definitely true. It's like, yeah, we don't really care about that. We just want the money, and we're exploiting the pathologies of man haters to our advantage. And we know that. Yeah, we know. Like,
yes, very much.
Definitely. Hey, I'm gonna have to take off. But
okay,
it was.
It was a blast. We should definitely do this again.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. And let me just make sure that nobody gave me any more money. I don't think that they probably did.
I may have taken your money because I totally know how to do that. No, I really don't know how to do that. Thank you, all of you guys in the comments. I've been trying to talk and respond as best as I can.
I can't read the comments, by the way, because
oh yeah, so I figured out
my window froze. So.
No, so what I do, I'm talking on my phone, but I have my laptop on mute, so I'm able to see both without creating weird feedback loops. But yeah, so it's funny. Like, little story for you guys. The first time I tried to live stream with Prince of Queens, like I just ended up staring at him and the Liberal Hammer for like about 15 minutes because I was trying to live stream on my computer, but I couldn't get the volume to work right. And so literally I was just screaming at my microphone for 15 minutes and I couldn't ever make the computer work right. I eventually had to just do it on my phone.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. I didn't get
you guys are great.
I will probably be talking to our cat's gay soon, and we'll have new items on the agenda. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.